Hello everybody, John here, and today onto the garage. We're saying goodbye to Ollie, the Freelander 2. She's got to go. So what has gone wrong? What is happening? Why am I moving on my Freelander 2 Metropolis? I've had this car, which we call Ollie, for the last 2 years, and it's a car that myself and Jo, my wife, really wanted. Wanted to try out our own ownership experience with Land Rover, the alleged most reliable Land Rover that Land Rover ever made, Freelander 2. I particularly wanted a really nice spec, really nice condition Metropolis model, which I suppose classically the top of the range for Freelander 2s is HSE, but this is Metropolis, which is the run-out model. And how it differs from HSE is HSE typically will have bars that stick out the side, rock bars, I guess you call them if you're off-roader, dress-up bars, I think they are more likely. It will have roof rails on, it will have privacy glass. I don't need the roof rails, I don't like the side bars. I think it's probably because we're so used to seeing privacy glass on everything these days. A car that's just got tinted windows actually looks rather sharp. It's also got these nice 19-inch wheels on, unique badging, and essentially the top spec on the interior, including a couple of the options that are even options on a HSE that are included with Metropolis spec, which includes the softer deluxe version of the leather. I can't remember what they call it now, but there are 2 grades of leather, and this is the upgrade, which means more of it is real to start with, and it is a softer hide. The HSEs will typically have a wood trim here, and this has piano black. I think it looks very smart. I must admit, if it was a dark wood, I would have preferred it. So that's not necessarily a positive. It has a nice upgraded sound system. Being the last of the line, it's lost the big disc drive that used to be underneath the driver's seats and leaves a big cavity, because it has the sat-nav system that you would expect to get in an XF of a similar period, and it has the twin sunroof option, which is very, very nice. And so yeah, Ollie is that Metropolis that we always fancied, and took some fishing around to find a nice example, because they're not the most common. They're probably the most desirable model, unless you want the first edition, which comes in a rather, I don't know, dividing metallic orange, let's call it. I don't think it's ugly, I just don't know if it suits the look of the car. And I think the orangey metallic paint, much as it's striking and good, and I actually quite like it as a colour, I think it makes it look more akin to the Suzuki Vitara, you know, lifestyle, sun and surf styly look. So yeah, we shopped around for a very long time to find the right model, and Ollie was it. It's very windy today. I think the microphone's probably protecting you guys, but let's just jump in the car. There we go. So the next question is, so why is Ollie leaving the fleet then? And the answer is because I'm a complete car nut. And as car nuts know, it doesn't matter how something's doing, eventually something else takes your eye or you fancy a change. And 2 years is pretty much my trigger point. Certain cars have stayed with me a much longer period of time. Purdy, my XK8, being a good example of that. But, you know, life's short. and I want to experience as much automotive goodness as I can. So the number one reason that Ollie is moving on is new toys. And I'm not going to share what the new toy is that's going to replace Ollie as the sort of jump in and go vehicle in our fleet, because I can share that in another episode, but needless to say, the deal has already been done. So I thought I would take a minute or two to share the 2 years experience of driving, owning, working in this car. And let's start off with Land Rover's Achilles heel, which is their reputation for reliability issues. Now, at the beginning I said this is the reliable Land Rover, and part of the reason we chose it. But I have got to say that I think sometimes people don't compare apples with apples. So why do Land Rovers have a lot of issues? Some of it is the amount of electronic systems, devices, clever stuff that they've got on board. There's just more to go wrong, and it's more bleeding edge, as we would say. So it's not as tried and trusted when it's introduced. They tend to introduce quite novel and new features. So actually they're really reliable? No, they're not. So they are really nicely designed. The ownership experience when it's all working is fantastic, and is the reason that people will put up with a few foibles. They do have more than their fair share of electrical gremlins. The complexity of their suspension means that any parts that get changed on the average car you brush off as, oh yeah, it had a couple of bushes done for the MOT, as kind of consumable. You tend to remember it on a Land Rover or a Range Rover because they were very expensive. Land Rover's also had a rep for relatively easy to break into. That is in part true on some models, but it's also massively amplified by the fact that they are a car that gets broken into because thieves like to steal them. They're very desirable. They appeal to a wide range of people, and parts can be swapped and sold quite easily. So it's a mixed bag. They are not going to be the top of the reliability league table, no matter how you cut it, but they are not as bad as people make out. Freelander 2 should be the most reliable of all the Land Rover marked vehicles, and certainly Range Rover branded vehicles, because it's that happy mix of strong, overly built, well specified, without going to the extremes of the full fat versions of these vehicles. So I don't have 2 gearboxes, transfer boxes, locking diffs. So that's something that's missing, but equally it can't go wrong. It doesn't have the latest and the greatest infotainment and all the razzmatazz, but therefore can't go wrong. The engines, particularly in the UK, where the vast majority of them will have an engine that is derived from the 2.2 diesel, are incredibly well known, well sorted. They suffer from the same issues as almost all diesels of the era. They do tend to get blocked up EGR systems, a few other little maladies connected with breathing, but really there's not a lot of negative commentary around the engines in these vehicles. So what's my experience been like in terms of reliability? Well, I have had it 2 years. I have done a fair number of miles in it, and I have documented in my other videos everything that has happened, been replaced, etc. First issue was a rattly boot lid catch mechanism. So you go over certain bumps and you hear a jingle coming from the back. There's lots of opportunities for little bits of foam that are taped and cable tied around things to move or degrade and allow metal to tap. So, you know, the design wasn't good enough. And then on the production line, it's been tweaked. with these simple additions, and that's one of those sorts of examples. Anyway, easily resolved, but you do also hear of the lock mechanism needing to be replaced, the servo, that sort of thing. But yeah, we had a rattly boot lock. Number two, you can call wear and tear if you like. We had a sheared rear brake pad. So the pad was worn down. I think there was still 3 or 4 mil of material on it, but the material sheared from its backing plate. That is probably down to the quality of aftermarket pads that were on it. They weren't the originals. The remaining material sheared itself off, moved forward and jammed the rear brake. What that caused is a squeaking and a squealing, and it effectively took out the rear disc as well, and resulted in me doing a complete disc and pad swap on the entire car. Is that a reliability thing against Land Rover? Well, yes. Were they original pads? No. So again, some of the reputation for reliability issues is also connected with relatively expensive parts. People can cheap out on them now and again. And the third one could certainly have developed into a problem. We would say, oh God, Land Rover again. And that was, we were constantly getting lights on the dashboard saying that the off-road driving modes were unavailable. And that meant that the command select system down here wasn't allowing you to choose between standard drive, snow and grass, ruts and mud, or sand. In everyday driving, really not an issue, but obviously they're features of the car that you should have. So that involved a lot of learning on my part to work out what was going on. It turned out to be a Haldex module issue. So the electric module that's attached to the back, the diff on the Haldex unit, which is a clever hydraulically powered clutch that gives this car off-road abilities way beyond it should have, bearing in mind it doesn't have low ratios, it doesn't have locking diffs, but it will enable it to pull itself out of trouble even when only one wheel has any traction and when only any two wheels are in contact with the ground. Anyway, you can go back and look at the videos on that, but essentially how I resolved it after much shenanigans and using independent specialists to look at it was just removing all the electrical connections, cleaning everything up, hard reset with a battery, put it all back together, and I think we've gone 18 months without any issues. So yeah, actually just a dicky connection. And that is all that has gone wrong with this car. I will also say that I changed the battery soon after I got it. Did I need to? No, but I felt it was turning over a little slowly. So putting a new battery in a Land Rover or a Jaguar is always a good idea because so many of the systems are so dependent on having excellent voltage. But I can't really call that a fault or even a cost because it was very much a choice thing based on my biases. I did also have a wheel bearing changed after an MOT because it was picked up that it was a little bit of slack in it, and at the time I just didn't have the time to deal with it myself. So my ownership experience has been good, positive in terms of reliability. Can I claim it has been absolutely fault-free? No. Does it give me a negative impression of Land Rover as a brand? No. If I'm honest, the exception being the boot latch. Personally, I'm very familiar with walking up and down production lines in factories. That was the bit that was a little bit exposing, and you know, they should have done better on that. As a car to drive daily, I found this very, very nice. It's plush, it's well appointed, it's got toys, it's got comfort, it's reasonably quiet, and the elevated driving position makes for a really good, easy mile munching. So I've really enjoyed driving it for work and for pleasure. Next is a criticism of the era rather than the vehicle. I would say that the sat-nav system is adequate still today. It's no longer updatable, but it works. It's a little laggy compared to what we're used to these days, and integration and reliability of that integration with your mobile phone works, but can be a little dicky. So sometimes I find my phone isn't connected, so I've got it connected via a USB down here because that helps me charge it, and the head unit forgets how to read the music off it, so I'll disconnect the wires and it'll pick it up via Bluetooth, and yeah, it's got a few little foibles, but it's really no big deal. It is something I think that somebody younger than me would criticize about this car in this era. I don't think it's especially bad. Voice commands on this car work about 70% of the time, and then get irritating and you go and press the buttons. It's got cruise control, speed limiters, all those sort of good stuff, but is not at that era where we had radar operated cruise control, which is no great issue for me. The Metropolis has keyless entry and the later JLR style of key fob than most of the cars that look like this one, and there is a nice little feature here in this cubby is somewhere that can sit. I think that's rather good, and without that I'd be constantly irritated. This makes it feel like, you know, I've got somewhere in the car to put it, and when I get out of the car I take the key with me. It just really appeals to me. Aircon has always been excellent in this and is icy cold. Never had to recharge it. The sound system, the Meridian sound system in this is very good, gives superb sound, and part of that is down to the fact that being a Metropolis, if we go in the boot, when we lift the boot lid base, we don't get the spare wheel. That's because of the large low profile wheels, but we do have a bass speaker or subwoofer back there, and all of this is porting for it, and it's superb. It has a compressor and a bottle of fluid to repair a tyre, and a sort of spare storage area rather than having a spare wheel. As I say, that's down to the use of these rather nice diamond cut wheels. They're 19-inch running 55 profile tyres, which is not such a good wheel if you want to actually put some off-road specific tyres on. Then you'd probably want to switch down to a smaller wheel, but they do look sharp and they make the car handle surprisingly well. Quite a go-kartish feel to it. Rear accommodation is excellent, really roomy. Even used the middle seat now and again with adults, and it's really very decent, helped out by the fact it feels bright and light because of the twin sunroofs, loads of headroom, loads of knee room in here, cup holders everywhere, and little neat storage platforms. The seats fold properly flat, so the base comes up, the backrests come down, split fold, and gives you a flat platform level with this surface. Now, a negative is the load height on this car is really quite excessive. So this is, you know, almost waist height on me. It's not got a lift kit on or anything. I think as non-hardcore off-roading machines go, that's probably about as high as any of the boot floors are. Does make for a nice seat, I've got to say, when you back up to the beach with your little canopy above your head. So that is brilliant. But for loading heavy things like bicycles in, I play around folding electric bikes. I load them in here. They're hard work to lift. It'd be nice if the parcel shelf or blind had a home that it could fit into under here, but it doesn't. So it's a mixed bag back there. Our car's got a tow bar. An awful lot of these do, because they do tow well. And stylistically, I love this nicely integrated rear spoiler with the clear high level brake lights. Also got the washer jet in it. As a automotive engineer, that just appeals to me as a nice piece of work. These panels do tend to fade quite badly on Freelander 2s. So I've treated them with Cerakote, sort of a ceramic wipe, and that has stayed black and not really changed for about 18 months. Positive and negative to look at here is you've got all these great controls for your seat. So electrically adjustable, you can raise and lower the squab, angle it, move around, backrest. It's got memories, it's got lumbar support, superb. However, when you're in the car, you can't see any of this. When you're in the car, you're reaching down in this gap to do any of this, and I defy anybody to go to the buttons first time or even second time whilst fumbling around. They're just too difficult. They need to be on the door card, or at least the memory buttons do. They're not intuitive enough. You can get away with the seat moving buttons down there, but not the memory buttons. Fuel economy. This car has returned an average over the 2 years of 31 miles per gallon. So I kept one of the trips for the entire period. So that is the logged, but from the computer's point of view, average MPG. I would say generically, most trips I would average about 34 without trying. So for the nature of the car, the shape of the car, the size of the car, I think that's pretty decent. Regulars to the channel will know that I enjoy hypermiling, the art of trying to get as much to the gallon out of a vehicle as you can. And you can coax one of these to 41 miles per gallon. Most people will never do that unless it's an experiment. But they are pretty decent. For what they are, you're not going to find a much better, truly capable off-roader, though I wouldn't say hardcore off-roader, that is pleasant on the road, but you can still do reasonable miles per gallon. It's a great compromise. Handling isn't really something we associate with vehicles of this style. I would say that this is surprisingly good, in that anybody who knows anything about cars but has never driven one of these would jump in it and think, oh, this is actually fun and pleasant and handles okay. There are certainly Range Rovers and Range Rover Sports that you can pick up. They're probably more fun to drive, but then you are jumping up massively in price. And again, if we stick in era, if you're picking up a vehicle of a similar age to this, do you really want the reliability of a Range Rover Sport, for instance? I adore these headlights for the look, for the graphic, for the way they've integrated daylight running lights really nicely, but the fact that they've got LED lights that don't look lost in headlight housings that are still from an era when incandescents were the standard. I just think they are great. I've got a series of videos which are just car reviews And I give cars a specs score, just my acronym for my scoring system. So if you want to go to the playlist for those, you can find some other reviews. Typically I'm doing driving on them, but today is not a day I can shoot out and do a drive in this, and I don't have any other opportunities. So I'll give you my scores anyway. So my acronym specs starts with S for safety, and out of 10 points in my scale, this car gets a 7. Its era means it hasn't got the very latest safety kit, things like lane departure warning, blind spot warning, and auto emergency braking, things like that. But I think that remains a good package for safety. The P is for performance, although there are 2 P's in specs, the way I choose to spell it. This is the SDI engine, which for those not into Land Rover parlance means it's the most tuned version of the engine, and it's just shy of 200 horsepower from a 2.2 turbo diesel. It's no rocket ship, but it's lively for the style of vehicle, and it's mated to a really nice automatic gearbox that does everything you want really well, except occasionally when you're at a junction and you go to pull out, there's a hesitation for what feels like an eternity. It's just a little laggy sometimes from standstill unless you stand on the throttle. Other than that, performance is very decent. So again, you've got to take into context what it is, but I'm going to give it a 6. It's no sports car, but it doesn't disappoint. It's lively enough to give you plenty of fun. Practicality seats 5 people in okay comfort. Middle seat is a little narrower, a little firmer, a little higher, but it does the job. Things like bin storage, cup holders, bottle holders, charging, all that sort of good stuff is very decent. There's only really the high boot floor that is a fly in the ointment. It may not be the easiest to enter. For some people, it's just above that sort of Goldilocks height of things like Picasso, which is a tall, normal car. This one is slightly taller than some people will manage easily with, particularly in the back. But then it makes up with some practicality elements that you don't even know about until you really study the car. So lots of off-road vehicles, you get dirty legs as you drag your leg in and touch the sills, but this car has double door seals, one on the outer, one on the inner, and entirely covers its own sills. So you'd never get a dirty leg getting in and out of one of these, and it's designed by intention. If you're really geeky like me, you'll start to spot things like the wading depth is the tops of these rubbing strips. This shape here effectively deflects snow and rain over the screen. There's a lot of great stuff that is very off-road specific, which I'm not going to share in this particular video, but I might do a list for another day. But I'm going to give this an 8 for practicality. It is the Swiss Army knife of styles of vehicle. After all, it should be incredibly practical. Economy, we already talked about fuel consumption, which is very good for the style of car. It's old enough that it is not affected by crippling car tax due to its original value. So as we go to press, this would cost about £340. Servicing costs, if you use Land Rover as your provider of servicing, will be more expensive than anything else that is common on the roads. And Land Rover products are very common on the roads in the UK. But as long as you're going to traditional garages, and maybe using the odd independent now and again, servicing costs on these are not excessive. Insurance does tend to be a little steeper than you might expect in the UK, and that is just because of reputation for being stolen. And in my personal fleet, which includes a relatively expensive camper van and Jags as a rule, this has always been by far the most expensive to insure. So it is not the cheapest car to insure. Just check it out. If you're particularly young or have a bad driving record, just check it out. If you're a crusty like me, then you know it's all much of a muchness. But I think that one fully comp is costing about £350 for me. The last part of the economy equation is buying one. Freelander 2s generally a bit of a bargain. You can pick them up for anything down to about £5,000, I guess, for a very nice, decent Freelander 2. If you want a late model in great condition, if it's HSE, then you know you're going to be spending £7,000, £8,000, £9,000. If you want a Metropolis, then you could spend daft money. There is one advertised this week, which is literally the last one sold in the UK. So this is a 2014, which is the last model year that you could buy. But it was registered 2016, the example that I saw, and that one's up for £19,000 with 70,000 miles on the clock. So depending on the individual, they can be a little dearer than you imagine for a really nice one in certain specs. So economy, I'm going to put the whole car with everything we've learnt about in a bracket of around 6 out of 10. C in specs is for comfort. The car claws back a lot of ground in that. This is a plush car, but is very comfortable, but is very cosseting. If I'm going to knock points off, the 2.2 diesel is a little noisy when you start. It is a little clattery. It doesn't hide its diesel credentials at all, which really surprises me because the same engines are fitted into some X-types and they're much quieter. So it might even be tuned to sound off-road. The fact that it's a 4-wheel drive rather than a 2-wheel drive car means you do get some transmission shunt now and again, a few weird effects. It's not a limousine, so you don't get the floaty ride. You get a little bit of a jiggle at low speed, but overall you've got to say that the comfort level is excellent. Heated seats, heated steering wheel, armrests, all the good stuff. This gets an 8 out of 10. And the last element of specs is soul. And that's kind of a discretionary thing, and it's for the heart and soul, the passion, the character, the I want one element. And that's going to be very subjective for lots and lots of different people. This is not a vanilla car. It's not a piece of white goods. Some cars are, and that's fine because they're so brilliant at it. An i10 Hyundai, for instance, if you want a small car, it just does everything you want. It's brilliant. And I won't have it criticised, but I don't think it's got any soul at all. I think it's sort of a dead in the middle type car. This isn't in that category. It's certainly not going to set hearts pounding. For certain enthusiasts of Land Rover or off-roading of a sort of green lane style, it is a bit of an iconic vehicle. You will see people off-roading these against full-on diff-locked off-road machines just because they know it will embarrass so many of them with its 2 wheels in the air and still moving forward, haha, technique. It's far more fun to drive than you'd imagine, but it's not a heart-pounding car. It's not pretty, it's handsome. So where do we put it on a soul point of view? I think I give the Freelander 2 Metropolis a 6 for soul. So we're going to leave that one there. Now, for those of you who have managed to stop this long, and thank you very much, and if you're a regular to my channel, here's a little extra bonus treat for you. So Ollie is moving on. Sometime next week, he will be being collected by his new owner, and myself and Joe will be picking up the new car. So what have we got? I'm not going to tell you, but I'll give you a teaser hint and you guys can start guessing in the comments below. Because I would say that what we've gone for, it's so me and Joe, you can't have anything standard, is a real unicorn car. It's not a grey import, because some of you are going to think that straight away. I've got history in that. It's not a grey import. It's an official UK car. It's completely standard. It's luxurious, comfortable and plush. If I just take the brand, not even the model, there are less of this brand in the UK than there are Aston Martins. It didn't sell well. Any ideas? Fast, luxurious, economical? Don't forget to get your pictures in for the XK8 XKR X100 photo share. Send me a photo of your car to john@tothegarage.co.uk before the 31st of July, and we will put it into our share with the subscribers and vote video. And whichever one comes out with the most votes will end up on the front cover of a book that I'm going to publish. And you'll be able to buy the book. And if you send me a photo, and it's a decent photo, it'll be in the book. And it's no longer June. Oh, one of my favourite picks. I say that about most of them, but it's not because it's a red car particularly. It's the colours though. I just love this photograph. Well done to Steve Ferro. He did a very good colourful photograph the year before as well. But this one I think is my favourite of the two. So Steve Ferro's 2001 XKR, which is owned for 16 years. It's a time lapse of a street car passing by in Kansas City, Missouri, USA. Thank you very much, Steve. I hope you're going to be sending in a photo, if you've not already done so, for the 2025 photo share. What have we replaced Ollie with? What have we done? Well, you'll see real soon, but yeah, what is the unicorn car? See you soon, folks. Bye.